Picture this. You're holding a small, sun-baked piece of clay in the palm of your hand. It fits neatly against your skin, cool and surprisingly heavy for its size. Across its surface, someone, thousands of years ago, pressed a series of intricate symbols, sharp wedges, elegant curves, marks made with purpose and meaning. But here's the thing, no one alive today can read them. This isn't just an artifact, it's a direct message from a vanished world, a whisper across millennia that we haven't yet learned how to hear. Scattered from the floodplains of Mesopotamia to the rocky coasts of the Mediterranean, these untranslated clay tablets are more than historical curiosities. They are silent witnesses to lost empires, unheard stories, and secrets about power, belief, and daily life that could fundamentally reshape our understanding of human history. What if I told you that buried within these fragile pieces of clay could be records of forgotten kings, details of ancient economic systems, or even entire mythologies that have been lost to time? These tablets aren't merely decorative. They served as the administrative records, personal letters, legal documents, and sacred texts of civilizations that once dominated the ancient world. Some may hold treaties that redraw the maps of influence between long-gone superpowers. Others might detail trade routes that connected continents earlier than we ever imagined. And a few could even contain literary works, poems, hymns, or stories that rival the Epic of Gilgamesh in their depth and beauty. Yet they remain encoded, their stories locked away, waiting for the right mind, the right technology, or the right moment to reveal what they have always known. This video is an invitation to join that quest. Together, we'll explore how deciphering these ancient scripts could revolutionize not just academic scholarship, but our very perception of power, culture, and human connection across time. We'll look at the thrilling detective work involved in cracking these codes, the cutting-edge technologies bringing new hope to old mysteries, and the profound implications of what we might find. This isn't just about the past, it's about reclaiming lost voices and discovering narratives that remind us how intricate, ambitious, and beautifully complex our shared history truly is. So settle in and let's begin this journey into the secrets encoded in clay. Think about the dust settling after a dynamite blast in the hills of northern Iraq in the 1840s. This wasn't a controlled archaeological dig. It was a hunt for grand sculptures and gold for European museums. But what workers for British adventurer Austin Henry Layard found in the mounds of Nineveh was far more valuable than treasure. They uncovered room after room, entire palaces, really lined not with jewels but with shelves of clay, tens of thousands of clay tablets, each one covered in the precise, angular marks of cuneiform writing. This was the library of the Assyrian king Ashurbanipal, a collection of knowledge amassed in the 7th century BCE. It was a moment that should have rewritten history books overnight, but there was one enormous problem. At the time, no one in the world could read a single word of it. These tablets were messages in a code that had been lost for millennia. Similar scenes played out across the Near East. At the ancient city of Ugarit on the coast of modern-day Syria, another monumental discovery came to light in 1928. A farmer's plow struck something hard, which turned out to be a tomb, which led to the excavation of a royal palace containing its own vast tablet library. But the script on these tablets was different. It was an alphabetic cuneiform, a simplified system that was entirely unknown. In both cases, and in many others, archaeologists held in their hands the raw, administrative pulse of a civilization. Lists of taxes paid, inventories of military equipment, diplomatic letters between kings, and meticulous records of grain stores. They had found the filing cabinets of the ancient world, but the labels on the drawers were written in a language they couldn't understand. This is what makes the initial discovery of these clay tablets so dramatic. It wasn't just about finding old objects, it was about confronting the sheer scale of our ignorance. Here were entire libraries waiting to be read, filled with everything from epic poetry and astronomical observations to what we might now call international treaties, and even what appear to be early forms of scientific manuals. Assyriologist Irving Finkel of the British Museum often describes these untranslated tablets as sleeping documents, each one a potential bombshell of information that could, with the right key, completely upend a historical narrative we thought was settled. A single tablet could contain the terms of a forgotten peace, the name of a lost queen, or the recipe for a mythical medicine. The contexts of these finds are crucial to understanding their significance. Tablets discovered in a palace basement are likely to be mundane economic records, lists of sheep, rations of beer, payments to workers. But those same mundane records can tell us more about the daily life of a common person than any grand monument ever could. Tablets found in a temple complex might hold religious hymns, rituals, and omen texts, giving us a window into the spiritual worldview of an entire culture. And tablets found in the ruins of a merchant's house, like those at the old Assyrian trading colony of Kanish in Turkey, provide intricate details of long-distance trade networks, showing us the sophisticated economic engines that powered these ancient societies. Each location tells a different story, and each category of tablet adds a different piece to the massive puzzle of the past. Yet, so many of these documents remain stubbornly silent to us. Why have they resisted translation for so long, even with our modern technology? The simplest answer is that we often lack a Rosetta Stone for these specific scripts and languages. Without a bilingual text that translates the unknown into a known language, scholars are faced with a monumental task. It's not just about learning the vocabulary, it's about cracking the entire grammatical structure and cultural context of a lost world from scratch. Furthermore, many tablets are damaged fired by the very fires that destroyed the cities that housed them, making them fragile and fragmentary. Some scripts, like Linear A from the Minoan civilization or Proto-Elamite from ancient Iran, represent languages that have no known relatives, leaving linguists with no starting point for comparison. They are isolated islands in the sea of history, and we are still building the boats to reach them. So what does it actually take to unlock one of these ancient codes? The reality is far more complex than simply finding a dictionary. For every success story like the Rosetta Stone, there are dozens of scripts that have stubbornly resisted all attempts at decipherment. These are the true enigmas, the locked doors for which we have yet to find the key. Scripts like Linear are from ancient Crete, Proto-Elamite from what is now Iran, and the mysterious Minoan hieroglyphs stand as massive gaps in our understanding of the Bronze Age world. They represent entire cultures speaking to us in a language we cannot comprehend, their stories and administrative records sitting in museum cases, silent. The core of the problem often boils down to one frustrating absence: the lack of a bilingual text. The Rosetta Stone worked because it said the same thing in 3 scripts, including known ancient Greek. It provided a direct translation manual. For most undeciphered scripts, no such manual exists. Scholars are faced with a page of text in an unknown language, written in an unknown script, discussing unknown topics. It's the ultimate academic puzzle. As the renowned linguist John Chadwick, who worked on deciphering Linear B, pointed out, breakthrough requires a rare combination of immense linguistic skill and what can only be called historical luck. You need that one crucial, contextual clue to fall into place. Beyond the lack of a Rosetta Stone, researchers face a gauntlet of other challenges. Many tablets are heartbreakingly fragmentary, broken by the weight of centuries or shattered in the fires that destroyed the cities that housed them. Imagine trying to solve a jigsaw puzzle with most of the pieces missing and no picture on the box. A single complete tablet can provide invaluable context, repeating phrases, grammatical patterns, or the overall structure of a document. A fragment offers only isolated symbols, a word without a sentence, a number without a list. Furthermore, without knowing the underlying language, it's impossible to deduce basic grammatical rules. Is it a subject-verb-object language? Does it use prefixes or suffixes? Are these symbols representing whole words, syllables, or individual sounds? Each possibility leads down a different path of analysis, and without evidence, it's easy to wander down a century-long false trail. Then there is the issue of cultural isolation. Some of these undeciphered scripts, like the Indus Valley script, belong to civilizations that left behind no obvious cultural or linguistic descendants. We have no idea what language family it might belong to. Is it related to Dravidian languages? Is it a completely isolated language with no modern relatives? This lack of a starting point makes the process infinitely more difficult. It's not just deciphering the script, it's about hypothesizing an entire language from scratch. For scripts that do have potential relatives, like Linear A potentially being connected to Linear B, the differences can be just as confounding. Linear B was used to write Mycenaean Greek, but Linear A represents a different pre-Greek language, making direct comparison useful but ultimately insufficient for a full decipherment. The very nature of the writing system itself can be a hurdle. Some scripts are logographic, where a symbol represents an entire word or concept. Others are syllabic, where a symbol represents a syllable like ma or tu. Some are alphabetic, and many, like cuneiform, are a complex mixture of all three. A single cuneiform sign could represent a word, a syllable, or even just a determinative to indicate the category of the following word, like whether it's the name of a person or a city. Without knowing the system's logic, every attempt to read it is essentially a guess. This is the monumental task facing epigraphers and linguists, to find patterns in the noise, to hear the grammar in the silence, and to patiently rebuild a bridge of understanding to a world that has been lost for over 3,000 years. Yet for all the immense challenges these ancient codes present, a quiet revolution is underway in laboratories and research centers around the world. Where the human eye sees only a cracked, faded, or fire-damaged surface, new technologies are beginning to peer deeper, illuminating secrets hidden for millennia. This isn't about replacing the painstaking work of linguists and historians, but about giving them a powerful new set of tools to see the unseen and connect the disconnected. The field of decipherment is being utterly transformed by a suite of advanced technologies that act like a kind of digital time machine, peeling back the layers of damage and decay to reveal the original text beneath. One of the most powerful of these tools is multispectral imaging. Think of it as a form of super-powered photography. A damaged clay tablet might appear blank or hopelessly smudged under normal light. But by capturing images of the object using light from different parts of the spectrum, including ultraviolet and infrared, researchers can dramatically enhance the contrast between the baked clay and the ancient ink or the impressions themselves. Faded strokes that are completely invisible to our eyes suddenly leap into sharp relief. This technique has been used to recover erased medieval manuscripts, read blackened scrolls from Herculaneum that were carbonized by the eruption of Mount Vesuvius, and bring new lines of text to light on countless cuneiform tablets. It's a non-invasive process, meaning the fragile artifact isn't harmed, and it often provides the first clear look at a text that hasn't been read in over 3,000 years. But the real game changer on the horizon is the application of artificial intelligence and computational linguistics. This moves beyond simply making the text visible to actually helping to read it. Projects like DeepScribe, a collaboration between computer scientists and classicists, are pioneering this approach. They trained a neural network, a type of AI, on thousands of photographs of known ancient Greek inscriptions, many of which were damaged or incomplete. The system learned the patterns of the language, the common shapes of letters, and the typical phrases used by scribes. Now, when presented with a new, damaged inscription, the AI can suggest the most probable missing letters or words, effectively acting as a powerful auto-correct for history. It can scan thousands of fragments in the time it would take a human expert to study one, identifying potential joins and matches based on handwriting style, word choice, and textual patterns that would be almost impossible for a person to consistently detect across such a vast dataset. This capability for large-scale analysis is perhaps the most exciting aspect. For over a century, scholars have been publishing individual translations of tablets, but it's been nearly impossible to analyze entire archives at once. Now, with digitized corpora and powerful algorithms, researchers can perform what's called distant reading. They can track the frequency of certain words across centuries, map the movement of specific scribble schools, or identify the unique administrative jargon of a particular city. This can reveal subtle connections that were previously overlooked. For instance, an analysis might show that a specific term for a type of textile only appears in tablets from merchant colonies in a certain 50-year period, pointing to a brief but vibrant trade network that had been lost to history. The tablet is no longer just a solitary document. It becomes a single data point in a much larger story of human interaction. We are already seeing remarkable case studies. AI has been used to help decipher the cryptic shorthand of ancient Aramaic contracts, revealing new details about property law. Pattern recognition software is being applied to the mysterious Indus Valley script, not to read it yet, but to definitively prove it is a true writing system based on a consistent and non-random structure. And in one of the most promising projects, researchers are using computed tomography scans, the same technology used in medical CT scans, to digitally unroll and read entire libraries of carbonized scrolls from Herculaneum without ever physically touching them. These are not science fiction fantasies. They are active research projects that are delivering real, tangible results, bringing us closer than ever to hearing the voices preserved in clay. Now consider the story of Michael Ventris, an architect by trade, who sat down at his kitchen table night after night to tackle a puzzle that had stumped professional academics for half a century: the meaning of Linear B. The script was found on clay tablets across Crete and the Greek mainland, and most experts were convinced it represented the language of the mysterious, sophisticated Minoan civilization. They believed it was a language isolate, completely unique and unrelated to any known tongue. Ventris, working not as a university professor but as a brilliantly dedicated outsider, approached the problem with a fresh perspective and a unique tool. He assumed the underlying language could be Greek. This was a radical, almost heretical idea at the time, but it was the key that finally unlocked the door. His method was a masterclass in systematic, logical deduction. He started by identifying recurring groups of signs, which he suspected were the names of places. He noticed that certain sign groups appeared only on tablets found at Knossos on Crete, while others appeared only on those from the mainland site of Pylos. He theorized these were toponyms, and he matched them to known ancient Greek place names. One group, which he suspected was the word for Knossos, fit perfectly. Another matched Amniso, the harbor of Amnisos. This was the crucial foothold he needed. From there, he could assign sound values to the syllabic signs, slowly and painstakingly building out a grid of phonetic values, testing each new character against the emerging words to see if they produced coherent Greek terms. The moment of truth came when he deciphered a tablet that seemed to list various vessels and their quantities. The words that emerged were unmistakably early Greek: tai rai, po for tripod, a three-legged pot, and kai-tu for wheat. He hadn't just cracked a code, he had proven that the rulers of the great palace at Knossos in its final era were not Minoans but Greek-speaking Mycenaeans. The historical implications of this decipherment were nothing short of revolutionary. Overnight, the timeline and power dynamics of the entire Aegean Bronze Age were rewritten. The Linear B tablets revealed that the Mycenaeans, far from being the unsophisticated warriors previously imagined, administered a complex, centralized bureaucracy from their palace strongholds. The tablets were their administrative records, detailing the meticulous allocation of resources. So many units of barley to a specific group of workers, so many sheets of bronze to a blacksmith, inventories of chariot wheels, and records of offerings to the gods. We learn the names of their deities like Poseidon and Zeus, showing a direct continuity with the later classical Greek pantheon. We discovered a society obsessed with record-keeping, where every jar of olive oil, every piece of cloth, and every single person was accounted for in the palace's economic engine. Ventris's story is a powerful testament to the role of interdisciplinary thinking and passionate amateurism in the face of grand academic challenges. He was not a trained linguist or a career academic. He was an architect who applied a designer's spatial and structural logic to a linguistic problem. He collaborated closely with a professional classicist, John Chadwick, who provided the deep knowledge of Greek language and history that Ventris himself lacked. Their partnership was the perfect fusion of outsider innovation and insider expertise. It proves that the next great decipherment might not come from a lone genius in an ivory tower, but from a curious mind in any field, armed with new tools and a willingness to question established dogma. The success of Linear B continues to fuel the hope that surrounds its still mysterious predecessor, Linear A. If one script so long misunderstood could yield such a world-altering truth, then surely another can. The whispers from the clay are there, we just need to learn how to listen. For the vast majority of undeciphered scripts, there is no Michael Ventris moment waiting in the wings, no single brilliant leap of logic that will suddenly make everything clear. The reality is far more arduous, and it all comes down to one simple, frustrating problem: the lack of a key. In the world of code breaking, whether it's a modern cipher or an ancient one, you need a way in. For linguists, that way in is almost always a bilingual or trilingual text, a single document that says the same thing in both an unknown language and a known one. It is the ultimate decoder ring, and for many of the world's greatest writing systems, it simply does not exist. The most famous example, of course, is the Rosetta Stone. But an even more monumental one is the Behistun inscription. Carved high on a cliff face in western Iran on the orders of the Persian king Darius the Great around 500 BC, this massive trilingual text tells the story of the king's victories and the legitimacy of his rule. It does so in three different cuneiform scripts: Old Persian, Elamite, and Babylonian. In the 19th century, British Army officer Henry Rawlinson literally risked his life, using ladders and ropes to scale the cliff and make paper impressions of the text. His work, and that of others, was groundbreaking because they could use the known language Old Persian, which was related to languages scholars were already familiar with, to crack the code of the unknown ones, Babylonian and Elamite. The Behistun inscription didn't just unlock one language, It became the master key that opened the door to understanding the entire corpus of Mesopotamian cuneiform literature, from the Epic of Gilgamesh to the Code of Hammurabi. It provided the grammatical structure and vocabulary that allowed every other tablet to finally speak. This is why the absence of such a text is so paralyzing for scripts like Linear A or Proto-Elamite. Scholars are not just lacking a dictionary, they are missing the entire foundation upon which to build one. Without a bilingual anchor, every attempt at translation is built on a foundation of sand. It forces researchers into a painstaking process of slow, meticulous deduction, relying on contextual clues and the principles of comparative linguistics. They look at where a tablet was found. Was it in a temple, a palace storeroom, a merchant's house? This context offers hints about its possible subject matter. They analyze the structure of the text itself. Are there recurring sign groups that might be numbers or names? Are there logograms, pictures that represent a whole word like a jar or a sheep, that can give a vague sense of the topic? It's a process of building a hypothesis, one tiny, fragile piece at a time, knowing that a single wrong assumption can send the entire delicate structure tumbling down. A brilliant example of this slower, more methodical success is the decipherment of Ugaritic. The language of the ancient city of Ugarit was completely unknown when its tablets were discovered in 1928. But scholars had a few critical advantages. First, the script was alphabetic cuneiform, a limited set of about 30 signs, which is far easier to tackle than a system with hundreds of symbols. Second, and most importantly, the language belonged to the Semitic family, which includes well-understood languages like Akkadian, Arabic, and Hebrew. Linguists could use their knowledge of Semitic grammar and vocabulary as a guide. They could look at a Ugaritic word and make an educated guess based on its Semitic cousins. When they saw a word that might mean king based on its position in a sentence and it looked similar to the Hebrew word melech, they had a potential match. This process of cross-comparison, combined with the clear administrative and literary nature of many texts, allowed them to decipher the language with astonishing speed within just a few years of its discovery. Ugaritic revealed a rich Canaanite culture, complete with its own epic poetry and pantheon of gods, dramatically expanding our understanding of the late Bronze Age Levant. This is why the search for a new bilingual inscription is the absolute holy grail of archaeology. Every time a new cache of tablets is unearthed, there is that heart-pounding moment of hope. Could this be it? Could one of these lumps of clay contain a vocabulary list, a treaty between a known king and an unknown one, or a dedicatory inscription in 2 languages? The discovery of even a short bilingual text could do for Linear A what the Behistun inscription did for cuneiform, provide the fixed points around which the entire language can finally rotate into focus. It would be the spark that ignites a new understanding of the Minoan world, potentially revealing their true language, their religious beliefs, and their political structure without the filter of later Greek sources. Until that day comes, these ancient voices remain just out of earshot, their stories hovering on the edge of understanding, waiting for the one key that can turn the lock. But beyond the thrill of solving a linguistic puzzle, the real stakes of decipherment lie in its power to radically reshape our understanding of human society itself. Unlocking these ancient scripts isn't just an academic exercise confined to university seminars. It's a direct line into the minds of long-dead administrators, kings, and merchants, revealing the raw mechanics of power, control, and cultural exchange that built our world. Imagine for a moment that we could finally read the Proto-Elamite tablets from ancient Iran. These texts don't just represent a lost language. They are the operating system of one of the world's earliest state-level societies, contemporary with and just as complex as ancient Mesopotamia. Right now, our models of early state formation are heavily biased towards the well-documented examples of Sumer and Akkad, simply because we can read their records. This has created a subtly Eurocentric, or rather Mesopotamo-centric, view of civilization's dawn. But what if the Proto-Elamite bureaucracy organized its labor force differently? What if its trade networks stretched further east into Central Asia and the Indus Valley than we currently believe? Deciphering these tablets could shatter our existing paradigms, proving that multiple, unique models of complex society emerged independently, challenging the very definition of where and how civilization began. Political implications run even deeper. These clay tablets were the hard drives of the ancient world, storing everything from international treaties to internal spy reports. A single deciphered letter between monarchs could reveal the delicate dance of diplomacy and threat that maintained tenuous peace between superpowers. We know from the Amarna letters a cache of diplomatic correspondence from 14th century BC Egypt written in Akkadian cuneiform, that the great kings of Egypt, Babylon, Assyria, and the Hittites addressed each other as brother, engaging in elaborate gift exchanges and thinly veiled threats. They created a geopolitical landscape as intricate and fraught as any modern one. Now, consider that for every translated Amarna letter, there are thousands of untranslated tablets from other archives that could contain similar correspondence. What undiscovered alliances, betrayals, or covert operations are recorded in the untranslated archives of the Hittite capital of Hattusa or the Mitanni court? These texts could rewrite the political map of the ancient Near East, revealing forgotten empires that acted as crucial power brokers or documenting the strategies smaller states used to resist the domination of their larger neighbors, showing us that agency and negotiation were always part of the equation. Furthermore, these records often hold the blueprints of ancient law and governance, showing us how justice was administered and how authority was legitimized. The famous Code of Hammurabi is a translated example, but it is far from the only legal text. Untranslated tablets likely contain case law, court rulings, and legal precedents that show how these written codes were actually applied in daily life. Did different city-states have extradition treaties? How did they handle disputes between merchants from different cultures? The answers to these questions are sitting in boxes in museum basements, encoded in clay. Understanding these systems reveals that our modern concepts of sovereignty, international law, and bureaucratic administration have deep, ancient roots. It shows us that the challenges of governing diverse populations, managing economic inequality, and maintaining social order are not modern inventions but fundamental human puzzles that past societies tackled with remarkable sophistication. By giving voice to these ancient administrators, we don't just learn about the past, we gain a new, much longer perspective on the enduring problems of power and how to wield it justly. While we often picture ancient history through the lens of grand battles and majestic pyramids, some of its most revealing documents are far more mundane. Imagine, instead of a royal decree, a simple list. A list of jars of olive oil, bundles of wool, or weights of copper. This is the true pulse of an ancient civilization, and it was recorded with meticulous care on countless clay tablets. These aren't poems or prophecies, they are the spreadsheets of the Bronze and Iron Ages, the raw data of economies that thrived thousands of years before the invention of the coin. They offer us an unparalleled window into the daily engine of society, the movement of goods, the collection of taxes, and the intricate web of trade that connected empires. The sophistication of this ancient accounting is staggering. Scribes in cities like Ashur or Babylon didn't just make simple lists, they developed complex, standardized formats to record transactions. A typical administrative tablet might detail the quantity of a good, its quality grade, the names of the individuals who delivered and received it, the date, and even the purpose of the transaction, all sealed with personal cylinder seals that acted as signatures. We can see the evolution of contracts, from simple promises to elaborate agreements with interest rates, collateral, and penalties for default. This was a world with a highly developed sense of property rights, credit, and profit motive. The archives from the old Assyrian merchant colonies at Kanish in Anatolia are a perfect example. Thousands of tablets detail the caravan trade between Assyria and Turkey, revealing a system that operated with striking similarities to modern venture capitalism. Merchants raised capital from investors back home, managed complex logistics across hundreds of miles, dealt with tariffs and taxes from local rulers, and used a sophisticated system of credit notes to facilitate trade without the constant physical movement of silver. Deciphering more of these untranslated tablets could reveal the precise mechanisms of this early globalism, how they managed risk, settled disputes between partners, and perhaps even manipulated commodity prices. Beyond the mechanics of business, these economic records are a powerful lens into the social structure of these ancient worlds. A payroll list is more than just names and numbers. It's a snapshot of social hierarchy. It shows us who was paid what, revealing vast disparities between a chief priest, a skilled metallurgist, and a common laborer. It tells us what kind of work was valued most highly in that society. Inventories from temple storerooms show the flow of wealth into religious institutions, detailing the offerings made by everyone from the king down to the humblest farmer, painting a picture of religious obligation and economic redistribution. Some tablets from Mesopotamia even record the rations given to dependent workers, amounts of barley, oil, and wool that were essentially wages in kind. By analyzing these, historians can calculate caloric intake and standard of living, asking profound questions about wealth distribution and social welfare in the world's first cities. Perhaps the most exciting potential lies in the countless untranslated economic tablets sitting in museum collections. Each one is a missing data point. A single tablet could contain a price list for a range of commodities during a famine, allowing us to understand economic shock in the ancient world. Another might detail the regulations of a city market, showing how authorities fought fraud and ensured fair trade. A collection of them could map a previously unknown trade route, revealing that goods like lapis lazuli from Afghanistan or tin from Central Asia were traveling even earlier and through more complex networks than we ever imagined. This isn't just about adding detail to history. It's about fundamentally redefining our understanding of economic history itself. We might discover that certain concepts we consider modern, like futures trading or organized labor, have deep, ancient roots. The mundane lists of goods and accounts, once fully understood, have the power to give voice not to kings, but to the merchants, farmers, and artisans who truly built the ancient world with their daily labor. Yet beyond the ledgers of merchants and the decrees of kings lies perhaps the most profound mystery of all, the spiritual life of these ancient peoples. For all their meticulous record-keeping of barley and bronze, they were also deeply preoccupied with the divine, the mystical, and the eternal. Scattered among the untranslated tablets are those that almost certainly contain hymns to forgotten gods, detailed instructions for complex rituals, and myths that once explained the very creation of the world and humanity's place within it. These are the documents that don't just tell us what a civilization did, but what it believed, what it feared, what it hoped for, and how it made sense of the vast, unknowable universe. Deciphering a single religious text can be like suddenly hearing the chorus of a song where before we only knew the rhythm section. we have a stunning preview of what's possible from the texts we can read. The discovery and translation of the Epic of Gilgamesh was a watershed moment, not just for Assyriology, but for all of humanity. Here was a story written millennia before Homer that grappled with themes of friendship, loss, the fear of death, and the quest for immortality, themes that are utterly timeless. It gave us a window into the Mesopotamian soul, revealing a worldview that saw the gods as capricious and distant, and human life as fleeting and precious. It contained a flood narrative so strikingly similar to the story of Noah that it forced a re-evaluation of biblical history. Now, imagine that impact multiplied. What other foundational stories are waiting in the untranslated archives? What if a Minoan tablet from Knossos, written in the elusive Linear A script, contains their own version of a creation myth, one that features a powerful goddess of the sea or a labyrinth, not as a prison for a monster, but as a sacred pathway for initiation rituals? The potential to reshape our understanding of Mediterranean spirituality is simply immense. These religious tablets acted as the ultimate cultural repositories. They were not merely stories, they were operating manuals for engaging with the divine. A ritual text would prescribe the exact offerings to be made to appease an angry weather god, the precise hymns to be sung to ensure a bountiful harvest, or the correct procedure for interpreting omens from a sacrificed sheep's liver. This wasn't superstition, it was a sophisticated technology of belief, a system for maintaining order in a chaotic world. By understanding these rituals, we understand the contract ancient people felt they had with their gods, a relationship of reciprocity and obligation. An untranslated tablet from a Hittite temple might detail the annual renewal ceremony for the king's power, a ritual that politically legitimized his rule through divine favor. Another from a Canaanite site could contain a prayer for safe passage across the sea, revealing the very words a Phoenician merchant would utter before setting sail into the unknown. The void in our knowledge is particularly acute for entire civilizations whose voices are completely silent. The Minoans of Crete, with their magnificent palace complexes and vibrant frescoes, are one of history's most fascinating enigmas. We see vivid depictions of bull leaping, processions of graceful figures, and powerful female deities holding serpents. We can infer a nature-centered, perhaps matrifocal religion that stood in stark contrast to the later, more patriarchal Olympian gods of the Greeks. But without being able to read a single word of their Linear script, we are essentially interpreting their entire belief system through silent pictures. Are we seeing a grand festival or a sacred rite? Is the woman with the snakes a high priestess or a mother goddess? The answers are locked in the clay tablets found in those very palaces. Deciphering them wouldn't just add names to their gods, it would allow us to finally hear their prayers, understand their concept of the afterlife, and know what they truly valued enough to write down and preserve for eternity. It would transform them from a beautiful mystery into a fully realized culture with a voice of its own. Think of history not as a single timeline, but as a collection of them, threads from different regions and cultures that we try to weave into one coherent tapestry. The problem is, these threads often don't align. A king's reign in Egypt might be dated one way based on temple inscriptions, while a similar period in Mesopotamia is dated differently based on astronomical records. This is where clay tablets become absolutely indispensable. When we can read them, they don't just add events to the timeline, they provide the anchors that can pull the entire tapestry taut, correcting stretches and wrinkles we didn't even know were there. A single, well-dated document acts like a universal joint, allowing historians to synchronize the histories of empires that never even knew each other existed. The power of a translated date is breathtakingly clear in the story of the Maya. For centuries, the magnificent ruins of cities like Tikal and Palenque were silent, their intricate stone calendars and glyphs utterly mysterious. Scholars could see the Maya had a complex understanding of time, but without being able to read their writing, the history of these city-states was a blur. The decipherment of Mayan glyphs, a monumental achievement of the late 20th century, didn't just give us their language, it gave us their history in their own words with astonishing precision. We now have exact dates for the accession of specific kings, like the famed Cainish Janub Pakal of Palenque, who took the throne on July 29, 615. We know the dates of decisive battles, of royal marriages arranged for political alliance, and of elaborate ceremonies marking the passage of time itself. This textual evidence allowed archaeologists to cross-reference these events with precise carbon dating from organic materials found in the same construction layers, creating a rock-solid, absolutely reliable chronology for an entire civilization. It transformed the Maya from a nebulous, legendary culture into a historical one with a detailed, year-by-year political narrative. This same potential for chronological revolution hangs over the greatest unresolved mystery of the ancient Mediterranean, the late Bronze Age collapse. Around the year 1177 BCE, the entire interconnected world of the Eastern Mediterranean, from the Hittite Empire in Anatolia to the Mycenaean palaces in Greece and the city-states of the Levant, suffered a devastating, cascading failure. Palaces were burned, trade routes severed, and literacy itself was lost in many regions for centuries. But the exact sequence of events, the precise timing of which city fell first and why, remains hotly debated. The existing chronology is a patchwork of Egyptian king lists, scattered archaeological evidence, and a handful of translated Hittite and Ugaritic texts. Untranslated tablets from sites that witnessed this collapse could be the key. A clay letter from the final days of Ugarit, for instance, might be a desperate plea for help from the king of Ugarit to the king of Elashia, Cyprus, and crucially, it might be dated to a specific year in a specific pharaoh's reign. That one date could tell us if the city fell before or after the attempted invasion of Egypt by the mysterious sea peoples mentioned in Egyptian inscriptions, allowing us to finally sequence the dominoes of collapse. Textual evidence provides a resolution that pure archaeology often cannot. Radiocarbon dating is an incredible tool, but it gives a range of dates, a statistical probability that an event happened within a window of several decades. A well-dated tablet, however, can pinpoint an event to a single year or even a specific day. This is why these documents are so vital. They move us from the general to the specific. They allow us to say, this battle did not happen around 1200 BCE. It happened in the third regnal year of this specific Hittite king. This precision creates fixed points on the timeline. When archaeologists then find Mycenaean pottery in a destruction layer in that same Hittite city, they can use that textual date to refine the entire chronology of Greek ceramic styles, which in turn helps date other sites across the Aegean. It's a cascading effect of clarity, where one solid piece of textual evidence can tighten the chronological framework for an entire region, turning a blurry picture into a sharp, high-definition narrative of human rise and fall. Now consider the most profound silence of all, that of an entire civilization. For some of these undeciphered scripts, the challenge isn't just a matter of cracking a code. It's about giving voice to a people who left behind almost nothing but enigmatic symbols. The premier example of this is the Indus Valley civilization, a society that stretched across what is now Pakistan and northwest India over 4,000 years ago. It was a contemporary and rival of ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia, boasting massive, meticulously planned cities like Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa, with sophisticated drainage systems, standardized weights and measures, and vast trading networks. And then it vanished, leaving behind thousands of inscribed seals and tablets covered in a beautiful, baffling script that has resisted every attempt at decipherment for over a century. This isn't just a lost language, it's a lost world, and its script is the only direct message we have from the people who built it. The detective work involved in understanding such a culture without a Rosetta Stone is a fascinating blend of high-stakes guesswork and rigorous scientific analysis. Scholars are faced with a fundamental question: what kind of language are we even dealing with? The leading theories fall into two broad camps. The first, and perhaps most debated, suggests the language of the Indus Valley people was an early form of a Dravidian language, a family now primarily spoken in southern India. Proponents of this theory point to the presence of isolated Dravidian-speaking communities still existing in Pakistan today, potential linguistic relics of a much larger, ancient population that was displaced by the migration of Indo-European speakers into the subcontinent. They analyze the structure of the Indus script, arguing that the patterns of signs hint at agglutinative features common in Dravidian languages, where words are built by stringing together morphemes. The opposing view holds that the Indus language could be something entirely different, a language isolate, a linguistic orphan with no known living or historical relatives. This is a terrifying prospect for a decipherer, as it means there is no family of languages to use for comparison, no grammatical rules to extrapolate. It would be a language born from the unique cultural milieu of the Indus Valley, evolving in complete isolation before disappearing without a trace. Some even more speculative theories have proposed links to ancient Sumerian or Elamite, or to the mysterious Munda languages, but these lack strong evidence. Without a bilingual text, the debate often circles back to the same frustrating starting point. The script itself is short. The average inscription is only 4 or 5 signs long, making it incredibly difficult to perform the statistical analysis of word frequency and positioning that helped crack other codes. It's like trying to understand the entire English language by only reading the text on a handful of rubber stamps. Beyond linguistics, archaeologists and historians use every other available clue to build a profile of this silent culture. The remarkable uniformity of the cities suggests a highly organized, perhaps even non-hierarchical society, lacking the obvious grandiose palaces and temples that marked Egyptian pharaohs or Mesopotamian kings. The abundance of small, personalized seals depicting animals and mythical creatures points to a society deeply engaged in commerce and personal property. But what did they believe? The famous priest-king statue might depict a ruler, or it might be something else entirely. The large bathing tanks might be for ritual purification, or they might be civic water reservoirs. We are interpreting an entire civilization's values through architecture and art alone, a process fraught with the risk of projecting our own assumptions onto them. The undeciphered script is the missing key that could tell us if those seals were used by private merchants or state officials, if those baths were indeed sacred, and if this was a society ruled by priests, merchants, or a collective council. This is what makes the mystery so potent and so alluring. The Indus script represents the possibility of an entirely new historical narrative, one that operates outside the traditional frameworks we've built from the well-documented stories of the Nile and the Tigris-Euphrates. Deciphering it wouldn't just add another language to the roster, it would force us to completely rethink the model of early civilization itself. It could reveal a third path to complex society, one based on different principles of governance, trade, and spirituality. It is the ultimate cold case, a 4,000-year-old puzzle that continues to challenge our deepest assumptions about the human past and holds open the thrilling possibility that we have only begun to scratch the surface of our own history. Perhaps the most inspiring lesson from the story of Michael Ventris is that the key to a millennia-old mystery doesn't always reside within the ivory tower. Ventris was not a tenured professor of linguistics. He was an architect, an outsider who brought a fresh, systematic way of seeing patterns to a problem that had stumped the experts for decades. His story is not a fluke, but a powerful testament to the idea that a passionate and brilliant mind, regardless of their professional credentials, can fundamentally alter the course of history. This tradition of the gifted amateur is now entering an entirely new phase, supercharged by the connective power of the internet, transforming what was once a solitary pursuit into a global, collaborative effort that is truly democratizing the process of discovery. We are now witnessing the rise of citizen science on an unprecedented scale. Online platforms have thrown open the doors of the world's museum archives, inviting anyone with curiosity and an internet connection to contribute to genuine academic research. One of the most exciting initiatives in this field is a project on the Zooniverse platform, where volunteers from around the world are tasked with transcribing ancient cuneiform tablets from digitized photographs. These are not simple exercises. These are real, undeciphered administrative records from ancient Iraq, and each transcription adds one more piece to the vast, interconnected puzzle of the Mesopotamian economy. The human brain is exceptionally good at pattern recognition, often spotting subtle variations in wedge marks or spotting a recurring sign that a computer algorithm might miss. By distributing this immense workload across thousands of eager eyes, projects that would have taken a single scholar a lifetime can be completed in a matter of months, dramatically accelerating the pace of research and freeing up professional academics to focus on the higher-level analysis and interpretation that these new data streams provide. This crowdsourcing model offers a powerful solution to one of the field's biggest challenges: the sheer overwhelming volume of material. There are an estimated 500,000 cuneiform tablets sitting in museum collections worldwide, and only a fraction of them have ever been read or published. No university department, no matter how well funded, could ever hope to process that mountain of clay, but a global community of volunteers can. This approach harnesses a diverse range of perspectives. A retired engineer might notice a structural pattern in account tablets that a linguist would overlook, while a graphic designer might have a sharper eye for slight variations in a scribe's handwriting. This diversity of thought is invaluable. It breaks down the echo chambers that can sometimes form in specialized academic fields and injects new energy and new ways of thinking into ancient problems. Beyond the practical benefits of transcribing texts, engaging the public in this hands-on way fosters a much deeper and more meaningful appreciation for our shared cultural heritage. It's one thing to see an artifact behind glass in a museum. It's an entirely different, more intimate experience to spend 20 minutes carefully tracing the signs on a 4,000-year-old tablet from the city of Umma, knowing that you are the first person to truly look at it in centuries. This process transforms the public from passive consumers of history into active participants in its recovery. It builds a powerful sense of connection and stewardship, creating a global constituency of people who understand the value of preserving these fragile links to our past and are invested in the ongoing story of their decipherment. The next Michael Ventris might not be working alone at a kitchen table. They might be a participant in one of these digital projects, and their moment of brilliant insight might come from collaborating with a network of fellow enthusiasts from every corner of the globe. But the quest to unlock these ancient voices is not just a technical or linguistic challenge. It's a deeply human endeavor fraught with complex ethical questions that we can no longer afford to ignore. Who truly owns the past? When a clay tablet is excavated from the soil of modern-day Iraq, Syria, or Iran, and then housed in a museum in London, Paris, or New York, who has the moral right to study it, to interpret it, and to tell its story? For much of the history of archaeology, the answer was simple: the Western institutions and scholars who had the resources to excavate and preserve these objects. But this framework is increasingly being recognized as a legacy of colonialism, a time when cultural treasures were often treated as spoils to be collected by powerful nations, with little regard for the wishes or heritage of the people who still lived in the lands where they were found. Today, the field is undergoing a necessary and profound reckoning with this history, striving to move from a model of extraction to one of collaboration. This shift is embodied in the growing movement for repatriation. Countries like Iraq and Egypt are actively campaigning for the return of artifacts taken during the colonial era or looted more recently during periods of conflict. The ethical imperative here is clear. These objects are not merely global curiosities. They are foundational to the cultural identity and historical narrative of the nations that are their rightful home. When a Mesopotamian tablet is returned to Baghdad, it is more than a physical object coming back. It is a piece of national patrimony being restored, a chapter of a story being given back to its authors. This movement challenges museums and universities in the West to confront the often problematic origins of their collections and to consider whether their stewardship should sometimes mean letting go. Beyond the physical ownership of the artifacts themselves, there is the equally vital question of intellectual sovereignty. Decipherment is an act of interpretation, and interpretation is never neutral. For generations, the narrative of the ancient Near East has been written almost exclusively by Western scholars, whose own cultural perspectives and biases inevitably shaped the story they told. A decolonized approach to decipherment actively seeks to include the voices and insights of scholars from the modern regions where these civilizations flourished. An Iraqi archaeologist or a Syrian linguist may bring a profoundly different and often deeply valuable perspective to the study of a cuneiform text, informed by a continuous connection to the land and its later cultural traditions. Ensuring that research teams are diverse and that local academics have primary access to and control over the study of their own heritage is a critical step toward a more equitable and accurate historical science. This ethical framework also extends to the very practical consequences of discovery. The knowledge gained from deciphering these tablets can have real-world impacts on contemporary communities. For instance, a translated text that details ancient land grants or water rights could potentially be used in modern legal disputes over territory or resources. This makes the process of translation not just an academic exercise, but a politically sensitive one that carries a weight of responsibility. Ethical practice demands transparency and a commitment to sharing the benefits of discovery with all stakeholders, ensuring that the rewards of unlocking the past, whether they are intellectual, economic, or cultural, are distributed fairly and do not simply reinforce existing power imbalances. The goal is to ensure that the voices we work so hard to recover from the clay do not end up speaking only for the interests of a privileged few, but contribute to a richer, more inclusive, and truly global understanding of our shared human history. Looking ahead, the horizon for these ancient texts is brighter than it has been in over a century, not because the puzzles have gotten simpler, but because our tools for solving them are becoming exponentially more powerful. We are on the cusp of a new golden age of discovery, one driven not by a single brilliant decipherer working alone, but by the collaborative force of artificial intelligence, sophisticated imaging technologies, and a global network of researchers sharing data at an unprecedented scale. The pace of decipherment, once measured in decades of painstaking manual labor, is poised to accelerate dramatically, transforming these silent libraries of clay into a chorus of voices all speaking at once. At the heart of this transformation is the burgeoning power of artificial intelligence, particularly machine learning and pattern recognition algorithms. We are moving beyond simply using our eye to read damaged texts. We are beginning to train it to think like a linguist. Imagine an AI system that has ingested every single known cuneiform text, every word of Akkadian, Sumerian, Hittite, and Ugaritic that has ever been translated. This system wouldn't just know the vocabulary, it would understand the deep grammatical structures, the common phrases used in economic receipts versus royal hymns, and the subtle stylistic tics of scribes from different cities and centuries. Now, when we feed it an untranslated Proto-Elamite tablet, it wouldn't be starting from zero. It could run millions of simulations, testing hypotheses against this vast underlying model of how ancient Near Eastern languages work, proposing the most statistically probable meanings for unknown signs based on their position, frequency, and context. It could identify that a particular cluster of signs often appears alongside logograms for sheep and wool, suggesting it might be a unit of measurement or a quality grade. This isn't about replacing human intuition and creativity. It's about giving scholars a powerful co-pilot that can handle the immense computational heavy lifting, allowing them to focus on the higher-order interpretation and cultural synthesis that machines cannot achieve. Beyond the digital realm, the physical discovery of new tablets continues to expand the very dataset that AI requires. The frontiers of archaeology are constantly shifting, with future breakthroughs likely to come from some of the most challenging and unexpected environments on Earth. Underwater archaeology, for instance, holds incredible promise. The ancient city of Heracleion, lost beneath the Mediterranean Sea for over a millennium, has already yielded stunning statues and gold coins. Who is to say that a submerged port warehouse or a sunken merchant vessel doesn't contain a sealed amphora stuffed with wax-filled wooden diptych or even watertight ceramic containers holding perfectly preserved clay letters? The cool, anaerobic conditions of a deep water site could protect organic materials that would have vanished on land, potentially preserving writing mediums we haven't even considered. Similarly, new excavations in conflict zones or politically sensitive regions, once they become accessible, could reveal entire new archives. A chance discovery in the basement of a previously unexplored temple in Mesopotamia or a royal tomb in the Caucasus could overnight double the number of known texts in a particular script, providing the critical mass of data needed for a decipherment breakthrough. So what might we actually find within these yet-to-be-read texts? The possibilities are enough to keep any historian awake at night with anticipation. One of the most tantalizing prospects is the discovery of a major literary work. We know from the small fraction of translated tablets that the ancient Near East produced epic poetry, wisdom literature, and philosophical debates that are as profound as anything from the classical world. The Epic of Gilgamesh is just the most famous example. There were undoubtedly others of similar scale and power that have been lost. A single tablet, or a series of them, could contain a lost epic from the Hittites detailing their myths of origin, or a Canaanite poem that rivals the complexity of Homer's Iliad, providing a direct literary bridge between the Bronze Age and the dawn of Greek literature. Such a find wouldn't just be a news story, it would be a seismic event in literary history, forcing us to redraw the map of ancient intellectual achievement. On the political and historical front, A single royal decree or treaty could radically alter our understanding of geopolitical boundaries. A tablet found in the ruins of a minor border town might record the terms of a vassalage agreement between a powerful pharaoh and a previously unknown kingdom in the Arabian Peninsula, revealing an empire's reach to be far greater than any map had shown. Another might contain the detailed memoirs of a court official who witnessed the assassination of a king and the subsequent coup, providing a gritty, first-hand account of the brutal realities of palace intrigue that official chronicles would never dare to record. These documents would move us beyond the idealized propaganda of victory stelae and into the nuanced, messy, and utterly human world of ancient power politics. This constant state of potential revelation is what makes the study of these tablets so uniquely thrilling. The field of ancient history is often perceived as static, a set of facts carved in stone. But the reality is the opposite. It is a discipline that is vibrantly, dynamically unfinished. Every untranslated tablet is a door that hasn't yet been opened, a thread that hasn't yet been pulled. A single line of text, once understood, could unravel a historical consensus that has stood for 100 years or weave together connections between cultures we never knew were in contact. This isn't just academic incrementalism. It's the genuine potential for earth-shattering surprises that remind us how much of our past is still out there, waiting patiently in the dark for its moment to finally speak. This is no longer a field for the lone scholar working in isolation. The romantic image of a dedicated expert spending a lifetime puzzling over a single script in a dusty library, while powerful, is being replaced by a far more dynamic and effective model, the interdisciplinary team. Cracking these ancient codes is no longer just a linguistic puzzle. It's a complex scientific and historical challenge that demands the combined firepower of experts from fields that, on the surface, might seem to have little to do with one another. It's the fusion of their distinct perspectives that creates the spark of true breakthrough, turning what was once an insurmountable wall into a door we can finally open. Consider the humble clay tablet itself. To a linguist, it's a page of text. But to an archaeologist, a scientist who analyzes archaeological materials, that same tablet is a treasure trove of physical data. Using techniques like X-ray fluorescence spectrometry, they can non-destructively determine the exact chemical composition of the clay. This isn't just academic curiosity, it's a powerful tool for provenance. Imagine we have a cache of tablets written in an unknown script. By matching the clay's unique chemical fingerprint, its specific blend of trace elements, to known clay sources across the Mediterranean, scientists can literally pinpoint the geographical origin of the raw material. This tells us if the tablets were written locally or imported from afar, instantly providing crucial context. If the clay comes from a specific island, it strongly suggests the language does too, giving linguists a vital clue about the cultural and linguistic family they should be investigating. Suddenly, a question of language becomes a question of geology and trade routes. The collaboration extends even further into the hard sciences. Paleoclimatologists who study past climate conditions are now vital partners in this work. Many administrative tablets contain meticulous records of harvest yields, noting years of abundance and devastating famine. By analyzing climate proxies like ice cores from Greenland or sediment layers from Turkish lakes, these scientists can reconstruct historical rainfall patterns and temperature fluctuations. Now, imagine they identify a severe, multi-decade drought around the year 1100 BCE, right around the time of the late Bronze Age collapse. A historian can then cross-reference this climate data with translated tablets from that era that lament poor harvests and rising grain prices. But more importantly, they can look at the untranslated tablets from the same period. If they see a sudden, dramatic shift in the script's administrative patterns, perhaps a move from recording vast grain surpluses to desperate rationing lists, it provides a powerful contextual framework. The linguist isn't working blind. They know the tablet likely deals with crisis management, giving them a thematic anchor for their decipherment attempts. The climate data tells the story of the environment, and the tablet holds the human response waiting to be read. Even the art historians and specialists in iconography play a crucial role. Many tablets, especially seals, combine text with imagery carvings of animals, gods, mythological scenes, or royal figures. The stylistic analysis of this artwork can be precisely dated by comparing it to sculptures and frescoes from well-established archaeological contexts. If the artistic style on a particular set of undeciphered tablets matches the art from the reign of a specific, well-dated pharaoh, it provides a secure chronological anchor for the text. Furthermore, the recurring symbols can offer hints at meaning. A sign that always appears next to an image of a bull might be related to a storm god, while one associated with a sheaf of wheat could signify a harvest or a tax in kind. The art historian decodes the visual language, providing the linguist with a parallel set of clues that can help verify or challenge emerging theories about the written signs. This breakdown of academic silos is creating a new kind of scholar, one who is comfortable speaking multiple disciplinary languages. The most exciting research now happens in these collaborative spaces, where a computer scientist's algorithm for pattern recognition is directly informed by a philologist's understanding of grammatical structures, and an archaeologist's interpretation of a destruction layer is refined by a chemist's analysis of the fire's intensity on the clay tablets found within. It's a recognition that the past does not come neatly divided into separate departments. A clay tablet is simultaneously a historical document, a linguistic artifact, a chemical compound, and a product of a specific economic and environmental context. To understand it fully, we need to approach it with every tool at our disposal. This cooperative spirit ensures that the stories we recover from the clay are not just translations, but rich, multidimensional narratives that reflect the incredible complexity of the ancient world itself. While the great libraries of Mesopotamia offer a tantalizing hope of eventual decipherment through volume and context, some ancient writing systems present a far more profound and haunting challenge. These are the scripts that appear not in the thousands, but in mere handfuls, etched onto a few precious artifacts by cultures that vanished so completely they took their entire world with them. These are the true ghosts of human communication, and perhaps the most poignant example is the script known as Rongo Rongo, found on Easter Island. Unlike the extensive archives of Nineveh, only about 24 wooden objects bear these intricate glyphs, a beautiful and baffling script of stylized figures, plants, and geometric forms. They are the sole textual legacy of the Rapa Nui people, and their meaning died with the last person who knew how to read them. The tragedy of Rongo Rongo is inextricably linked to the collapse of the society that created it. Easter Island was once home to a sophisticated and vibrant culture, famous for its monumental stone statues, the moai. However, a devastating combination of ecological overshoot, deforestation, and the brutal impact of European contact in the 18th century led to a catastrophic societal breakdown. Population collapse, slavery, and introduced diseases shattered the island's social and political structures. With the death of the ruling elite and the priestly class who likely guarded this knowledge, the ability to read the sacred texts was lost forever within a single generation. The wooden tablets themselves were burned as firewood or carried off as curiosities by outsiders, leaving behind a puzzle with almost all of its pieces missing. This utter loss of cultural context is what makes these disappeared scripts nearly impervious to decipherment. For a language like Linear B, scholars had the immense advantage of a known archaeological context: palaces, pottery, frescoes, and a later, related language in ancient Greek to provide clues. For Rongorongo and scripts like it, we have almost nothing. There are no bilingual inscriptions, no contemporary descriptions of its use, and no living linguistic relatives to use as a key. The modern Rapa Nui language, while descended from the same Polynesian roots, has evolved and was influenced by Tahitian after the old culture fell. We don't even know for certain what the glyphs represent. Are they logograms where each symbol is a whole word? Are they a form of proto-writing, a mnemonic device to help a reciter remember prayers or genealogies, rather than a true representation of spoken language? Some researchers have even proposed they are not writing at all, but a unique form of artistic notation. This level of mystery forces scholars to rely on the slimmest of threads. They analyze the few surviving tablets for any kind of pattern. Does the same sequence of signs appear on multiple tablets, suggesting a common refrain or a ritual formula? Does the direction of the writing alternate in a method called reverse boustrophedon, where one line is read left to right and the next right to left, as seen in some other ancient scripts? They look to the island's oral traditions and its rich petroglyph art for parallels in symbol design, hoping to find a visual link between a carved birdman figure on a rock and a similar glyph on a tablet. But each of these methods is ultimately a best guess, a theory built on a foundation of silence. The cultural universe that gave these signs their meaning is gone, and with it, the hope of a straightforward translation. Yet the drive to understand Rongorongo is about far more than solving an academic puzzle. Its decipherment would be an act of cultural resurrection. It could finally tell us the story the Rapa Nui people wanted to preserve. Were these tablets sacred texts containing creation myths and hymns to their gods? Were they historical records chronicling the voyages of great navigators who settled the island or the lineages of powerful chiefs? Or were they astronomical calendars tracking the movements of stars and planets crucial for navigation and agriculture? The answers would transform our understanding of this isolated society from a cautionary tale of collapse into a nuanced narrative of intellectual achievement and spiritual depth. It would restore a measure of voice and complexity to a people often reduced to the mystery of their statues. The story of Rongorongo serves as a powerful, sobering metaphor for the fragility of human knowledge itself. It stands as a stark reminder that entire systems of thought, entire libraries of wisdom, can be erased by the twin forces of time and tragedy. It underscores the profound importance of preserving the cultural heritage we still have, not just the physical objects but the living traditions and languages that give them meaning. Every effort to document a fading language, to protect an ancient site, or to digitally archive a fragile manuscript is a defense against this kind of total loss. These vanished scripts are not just historical curiosities. They are silent witnesses to the incredible diversity of the human mind and a permanent warning of how easily that brilliance can be extinguished, leaving behind only beautiful, enigmatic marks on a piece of wood or clay, waiting for a key that may never be found. There's a unique electricity that crackles through the world of archaeology whenever a new claim of a decipherment surfaces. It's a moment where the esoteric world of academic epigraphy collides with the full force of public fascination, and the results can be both exhilarating and deeply problematic. We've seen it happen time and again, most notably with artifacts like the Voynich manuscript, a beautifully illustrated book written in an unknown script that has baffled experts for centuries, or the Phaistos disc from Crete, a fired clay disc covered in mysterious stamped symbols that seems to defy all classification. Every few years, a new headline will blaze across news outlets and social media feeds. The Voynich manuscript has finally been deciphered, or amateur cracks the code of the Phaistos disc. These announcements tap directly into a universal human love for a good mystery, a deep-seated desire to see a puzzle solved and a secret revealed. For a brief, glorious moment, the complex, painstaking work of linguists is thrust into the global spotlight. This media attention is a double-edged sword, capable of both empowering and endangering serious research. On the positive side, a well-managed wave of public interest can be an incredible boon. It brings vital attention to underfunded fields, inspiring a new generation of students to consider studying ancient languages. It can open the door to crucial research grants and philanthropic donations from private individuals captivated by the story. The surge of attention around the Dead Sea Scrolls or the Rosetta Stone itself, for instance, translated into massive public support for museums and universities, ensuring these artifacts were preserved and studied for decades. This kind of engagement transforms the public from passive observers into active stakeholders in the process of discovery, creating a broad base of support that is essential for long-term academic survival in fields that don't always have immediate, tangible economic benefits. However, the relentless media cycle's hunger for a dramatic breakthrough can also create immense pressure, leading to the promotion of sensationalistic but ultimately unsound claims. The problem often lies in the gap between the cautious, evidence-based language of science and the headline-driven world of journalism. A researcher might present a very tentative, preliminary hypothesis at a conference, carefully outlining the need for further peer review and testing. A journalist on a tight deadline looking for the most engaging angle might then distill that complex presentation into a definitive-sounding headline, "Mystery of Ancient Script Solved." This can be devastating for the researcher, whose professional reputation becomes tied to a claim that was never meant to be presented as fact. It also misleads the public, creating a cycle of excitement and disappointment that can breed cynicism and make it harder for legitimate, peer-reviewed breakthroughs to be taken seriously when they finally do emerge. The phenomenon of the overeager amateur, often amplified by an uncritical media, presents another significant challenge. The history of decipherment rightly celebrates brilliant outsiders like Michael Ventris, but for every Ventris, there are dozens of well-meaning but misguided individuals who become convinced they have found the key without undergoing the rigorous, systematic process of verification. They might propose that the Minoan Linear A script is a form of ancient Finnish, or that the Voynich manuscript is an encrypted health manual written in a lost dialect. These theories are often based on superficial resemblances between signs and known alphabets, or on selective use of evidence while ignoring overwhelming contradictory data. When these claims are given a prominent platform by media outlets more interested in a good story than scientific rigor, it can waste valuable time and resources as professional scholars are forced to debunk them publicly. It can also foster a distrust of academic expertise, promoting a false narrative of a rigid establishment suppressing a lone genius, when in reality, the academic community is desperate for a valid solution that withstands scrutiny. This is why responsible science communication is not just a nicety, it is an absolute necessity. The best science journalists act as essential translators and gatekeepers, working to convey the genuine excitement and significance of archaeological research while accurately representing its inherent uncertainties and the slow, collaborative nature of real progress. They provide context explaining why a particular script is so difficult to crack and what the real-world implications of a decipherment would be, rather than just chasing a sensational headline. They know that the true story is often more fascinating than the fiction. It's a tale of international teams, of cutting-edge technology, of decades of painstaking work, and of incremental discoveries that gradually build toward understanding. By focusing on this authentic narrative, they sustain meaningful public engagement over the long term, far beyond the brief flash of a viral news story. Ultimately, this enduring public thirst for discovery is the greatest asset the field of decipherment possesses. It is a powerful force that ensures these ancient tablets, despite their silence, never fade into the background of history. They remain on the front shelf of our collective curiosity, perpetual reminders that our understanding of the past is never complete. This fascination guarantees that there will always be a 10-year-old child looking at a picture of the Phaistos disk and wondering what it says, a retired engineer running pattern recognition software in their spare time, or a university student deciding to dedicate their life to the study of a single, obscure script. That public appetite is the fuel that drives the entire endeavor forward, creating a constant, vibrant conversation between the scholars in the lab and the dreamers everywhere else, all united by the shared hope of one day hearing the stories still encoded in clay. Beyond the headlines and high-tech labs, the most enduring impact of these ancient puzzles might be found in a much more familiar place, the classroom. The challenge of an undeciphered script is a perfect, natural catalyst for education, transforming abstract historical concepts into a hands-on, engaging detective story that teaches far more than just ancient history. At its heart, this is a masterclass in critical thinking. Students aren't just memorizing facts, they are being invited to become junior code breakers, learning to ask the right questions, to spot patterns in seeming chaos, and to build a logical argument from fragmentary evidence. A teacher might present a class with a simplified version of an unknown script, perhaps a series of symbols on a clay tablet replica, and ask them to hypothesize what it says. Is it a list, a letter, a prayer? They have to look for clues. Are there repeating groups of signs that might be numbers or names? Are there standalone symbols that could be logograms for common items like sheep or grain? This process mirrors the scientific method itself, forming a hypothesis, testing it against the available data, and being willing to abandon it if the evidence doesn't fit. It teaches a kind of intellectual resilience and flexibility that is invaluable in any field of study. This educational approach is being brought to life through innovative programs that bridge the gap between the ivory tower and the school desk. Universities and museums are now developing curricula that introduce students to the basics of epigraphy, the study of inscriptions, and even computational linguistics. Imagine a high school coding class where instead of building a simple game, students write a basic algorithm to analyze the frequency and distribution of signs in a digital corpus of Ugaritic texts, learning both programming logic and ancient history simultaneously. Or a middle school social studies class where students use 3D printed replicas of cuneiform tablets and styluses to actually write their own names in the script, physically connecting with the same technology used by scribes 4,000 years ago. These experiences demystify the process of scholarship and make it accessible, showing students that history is not a static set of answers in a textbook, but a dynamic process of inquiry that they can actively participate in. The resources available for this kind of immersive learning are richer than ever. Museums around the world have created incredibly detailed digital archives, allowing anyone with an internet connection to zoom in on a tablet from the British Museum's collection as if they were holding it under a magnifying glass. Interactive online exhibits guide users through the steps Ventris took to decipher Linear B, presenting the same puzzles he faced and allowing them to follow his logical deductions. There are even citizen science platforms like those on Zooniverse, where students can contribute to real, ongoing research by helping to transcribe cuneiform tablets from digital photographs, becoming part of a global community of discovery. These tools break down the walls of the museum and the university library, putting primary sources directly into the hands of learners and fostering a sense of genuine connection to the past. Perhaps the most profound lesson embedded in the study of these silent texts is one of cultural empathy. Wrestling with an undeciphered script forces students to confront a fundamental truth, that humanity is not a monolith. Different cultures, separated by time and geography, developed completely unique ways of seeing and describing their world, and they encoded those worldviews into their writing systems. A student trying to understand why a particular symbol was chosen to represent a concept is, in effect, trying to step into the mind of an ancient scribe. They begin to appreciate that our modern ways of organizing thought are not the only ways, and that intelligence and sophistication can take many different forms. This cultivates a deep respect for the diversity of human expression and a humility about our own place in the long span of history. It teaches that understanding another culture, whether ancient or modern, requires patience, careful observation, and the suspension of our own assumptions. Ultimately, this educational mission is about more than creating the next generation of professional linguists or archaeologists, though that is certainly a welcome outcome. It is about fostering a broader cultural mindset that values careful inquiry, respects the past, and understands the painstaking work required to build knowledge. Every student who gets excited about cracking an ancient code, even a simplified one, is learning to appreciate the slow, cumulative nature of historical understanding. They see that major breakthroughs are built on a foundation of tiny, incremental discoveries contributed by countless individuals over generations. This ensures that the quest to understand our past is not just the domain of a few specialists, but a continuous, collaborative human endeavor, one that will carry forward the patience and curiosity needed to finally listen to all the whispers still waiting in the clay. Faced with a wall of silence from an untranslated tablet, scholars don't just stare blankly at the mysterious symbols. They have a powerful, time-tested strategy. They bring in the known to help decipher the unknown. This method, known as comparative analysis, is the art of using the scripts we can read as a kind of template or guidebook for those we cannot. It's a process of careful, logical inference, where every scrap of understanding from a deciphered text becomes a potential key for unlocking another. By meticulously comparing the structure, formatting, and recurring patterns of an unknown document with those of a well-understood one, researchers can start to make educated guesses about its content, slowly piecing together meaning from the shadows. The most straightforward application of this is with administrative records. Across the ancient world, bureaucracy had a remarkable consistency. Whether in Mesopotamia, Egypt, or the Mycenaean world, the day-to-day work of managing a palace economy followed predictable patterns. Scribes recorded information in standardized formats. A typical inventory tablet, for instance, might start with a heading, then list a quantity, followed by the item, then the name of the official responsible, and finally the date or the purpose of the transaction. Even without knowing the specific words, a researcher can often identify these structural elements. If they see a series of vertical strokes followed by a symbol on an untranslated Linear tablet, and they know that in the later, deciphered Linear B script, vertical strokes represent numbers and are often followed by a logogram for a commodity like wheat or olive oil, they can make a strong inference. They might not know the Minoan word for wheat, but they can be reasonably sure that this section of the tablet is recording an amount of it. This approach turns the document from an impenetrable code into a structured form they can begin to navigate, identifying where the numbers are, where the names are, and what the general subject matter might be. This comparative method extends far beyond just numbers and lists. The diplomatic correspondence between ancient kings, for example, followed incredibly formalized protocols. Letters discovered in archives like the Amarna letters in Egypt, written in Akkadian cuneiform, show a very strict formula. They begin with lavish greetings and boasts of the sender's good health and the blessings of the gods, then move on to the substance of the message, a request, a complaint, a deal, and conclude with more formal pleasantries. Now, imagine an archivist finds a cache of untranslated tablets in the ruins of a Hittite palace that appear to be letters. By analyzing their physical shape and the layout of the text on the clay, they might see that they start with a large, elaborate sign at the top, followed by a block of text, and then a smaller section at the bottom. Comparing this physical structure to the known formula of Akkadian diplomatic letters, they can hypothesize that the large opening sign is likely a royal name and title, a formal greeting from one king to another. This structural clue provides a crucial anchor point, suggesting that the following text is probably a diplomatic negotiation or a state secret, not a simple grocery list. It gives context where before there was only mystery. The power of this approach lies in its cumulative nature. It rarely produces a dramatic, overnight decipherment. Instead, it's a slow, gradual process of building a web of probabilities. Each small, successful inference acts as a fixed point on the map. One comparison might suggest that a particular cluster of signs represents the word for received. Another might indicate that a different sign group means from the storehouse. A third might identify a personal name. Individually, these are just fragments. But over time, they begin to connect. The sign for received often appears near the sign for from the storehouse, and both are frequently associated with that specific personal name. Slowly, a narrative emerges. A person named X received Y quantity of goods from the storehouse. This isn't a full translation, but it's a monumental leap from total ignorance. It demonstrates that historical understanding is built brick by brick, with each scholar's careful comparison adding another piece to the grand and ever-evolving puzzle of our past. But a tablet's journey to understanding doesn't end with its excavation. In many ways, that's where the real detective work begins. The precise spot where it was found, the layer of soil, the building's ruins, the other objects resting beside it, holds the first and most vital clues to its meaning. This is the power of archaeological context, the principle that an artifact is never just an isolated object, but a piece of a larger puzzle, intimately connected to the time and place it was deposited. A clay tablet discovered amidst the grand columns of a royal palace tells a fundamentally different story than one unearthed in a cramped merchant's storeroom or beside the altar of a remote temple. The context provides the frame, and without it, the text inside can be impossible to interpret accurately. Think of it like finding a single, torn page from a book. If you just have the page, you might be able to read the words, but you won't know what chapter it's from, what came before it, or what happens next. Now, imagine if you knew you found that page in a library science section, nestled between books on astronomy. Suddenly, the technical terms on the page make more sense. You can infer it's probably about stars or planets. Archaeology provides that same library section for ancient tablets. A tablet found in a temple's administrative wing, surrounded by other tablets listing animal sacrifices and vessels for holy oil, is almost certainly a religious inventory. One discovered in a barracks alongside broken weapons and armor likely details military supplies or personnel. The objects buried together in the same destruction layer or the same building phase were part of a single moment in time, a frozen snapshot of related activities. This associative magic allows scholars to make powerful, educated guesses about content long before a single symbol is ever deciphered. The science of stratigraphy, reading the layers of human occupation like the pages of a book, adds another critical dimension: time. A city mound or tell is built up over centuries, with each generation constructing on top of the ruins of the last. A tablet found in a deep, early layer is obviously older than one found near the surface. By carefully mapping these layers, archaeologists can create a relative chronology, placing tablets in a sequence. This tells us how a script evolved over time, showing early, clumsy forms of signs that became more refined and standardized generations later. More importantly, it can link a text to a specific historical event. If a layer contains clear evidence of a massive fire-charred beams, vitrified bricks, and a layer of ash, and within that layer we find a tablet that ends mid-sentence, it's a poignant clue. That document was likely being written or stored when the city was violently destroyed, forever freezing that administrative act in a moment of crisis. The stratigraphy provides the when, and the associated artifacts provide the what, building a multidimensional picture that pure linguistic analysis alone could never achieve. This grounding in material reality is the most powerful safeguard against pure speculation. Without context, the temptation to project our own desires onto an unknown script becomes overwhelming. The mysterious Phaistos disc, for example, was found in a palace on Crete, but without a clear, sealed archaeological context alongside other dated objects. This lack of firm associative clues has opened the door to a century of wild theories, from it being a prayer to a board game to an ancient geometric theorem. Contrast that with the clay tablets from Ebla in Syria. They were discovered in the 1970s inside a palace archive room that had been burned, which ironically fired and preserved the clay. The tablets were found fallen from their shelves, but still grouped together, because they were found in situ in their original place of use, and storage archaeologists could see that they were organized by subject. This physical context immediately told scholars that they were dealing with a formal state bureaucracy, and the groupings themselves provided clues for deciphering the subject matter of the different tablet piles, leading to the rapid understanding of Eblate. Ultimately, archaeology transforms these inscribed pieces of clay from isolated riddles into chapters of a coherent historical narrative. It connects the text to the people who wrote it, the building they worked in, the objects they used, and the events they lived through. A humble administrative list of linen garments gains profound meaning when we know it was found in the quarters of palace weavers, next to loom weights and bundles of flax. A treaty between two kings becomes exponentially more significant when it's discovered in a diplomatic archive alongside letters from other monarchs, allowing us to reconstruct an entire international network of alliances and rivalries. The context provides the stage, the scenery, and the other actors, allowing the text on the tablet to finally step forward and deliver its lines with clarity and purpose, completing a story that has been waiting millennia to be told. For centuries, the grand narrative of ancient history has been overwhelmingly masculine, dominated by the stories of kings, conquerors, and male priests. This perspective wasn't necessarily a deliberate distortion. It was often a simple reflection of the sources that were easiest to access and translate: monumental inscriptions celebrating male military victories and royal decrees issued in a king's name. But the true, granular details of daily life were recorded on a much humbler medium: clay tablets. And as we've begun to read these administrative and legal documents, a far more complex and surprising picture of women's lives has started to emerge from the dust, challenging our most basic assumptions about gender roles in antiquity. The translated texts we already have are revolutionary, but they are merely the first few pages of a story that could be completely rewritten by the vast number of tablets that remain silent. Consider the extraordinary evidence from the ancient city of Nuzi, located in modern-day Iraq. Tablets from the 2nd millennium BC, written in Akkadian, reveal a society where women were not merely passive subjects but active economic players. They appear in court records as plaintiffs and defendants. They buy and sell property in their own names, and they engage in complex business ventures, lending and borrowing large quantities of silver and grain. One tablet might detail a woman named Tulpanea purchasing a vineyard, while another records a woman acting as a witness to a legal contract, her seal pressed into the clay alongside the men's. These aren't isolated exceptions, they are part of the normal fabric of the economic life of the city. This evidence shatters the simplistic notion of ancient women as universally confined to the private sphere, suggesting instead that their legal and economic agency could be significant, varying greatly by period, region, and social class. Now, let your mind wander to the potential locked within the archives we cannot yet read. What if the untranslated Linear A tablets from Minoan Crete, a civilization renowned for its powerful goddess imagery and frescoes of women participating prominently in public ceremonies, contain the financial records of a great priestess? We might discover she managed vast temple estates, controlling stores of olive oil, wine, and precious metals, wielding economic influence that rivaled that of any male official. Or perhaps a new trove of tablets from a Hittite provincial town will detail the legal code surrounding marriage and divorce, revealing rights for women that we never knew existed, such as the ability to initiate a divorce and retain their dowry. The possibility is staggering. We might find the personal correspondence of a queen like Pujuhepa of the Hittites, whose translated letters show her negotiating as an equal with the pharaoh of Egypt. How many other such women of power had their own diplomatic missives, their strategies and insights recorded on tablets that we currently classify as undeciphered? The impact of such discoveries would be profound, forcing a fundamental reimagining of the ancient world. It would move us beyond the binary question of whether a society was a matriarchy or patriarchy, and into a much richer understanding of social diversity. We would see a spectrum of experience where a woman's role was shaped by a multitude of factors: her wealth, her city's laws, her family's status, and her personal ambition. History would become less monolithic and more human, filled with individual stories of innovation, resistance, and power that we never knew to look for. Each translated ledger, each deciphered contract, and each personal letter from these untranslated caches has the potential to add a new voice to this chorus, finally allowing the women of antiquity to step out from the long shadows cast by their kings and tell their side of the story. It's a common misconception to imagine ancient civilizations as isolated islands, each developing its own unique culture and writing system in a vacuum. Nothing could be further from the truth. The ancient world was a vibrant, interconnected web of trade routes, diplomatic missions, and migrating populations, and this constant flow of people and goods was the primary vehicle for the spread of one of humanity's most transformative inventions, writing. Scripts didn't just appear independently. They traveled, they were borrowed, they were adapted, and they evolved through contact, often in the bustling, multicultural hubs that sprang up along trade routes. An untranslated tablet found in a remote border outpost or a merchant's quarters isn't just a message in a single language. It's a potential snapshot of this dynamic process of cultural exchange, a place where languages met, mixed, and created something new. We can see this process clearly in the incredible journey of cuneiform. It began as a system of accounting in the city of Uruk in ancient Sumer, a series of simple pictographs pressed into clay to keep track of sheep and grain. But as Sumerian merchants traveled north and east, they brought their technology of record-keeping with them. Other cultures, like the Akkadians, encountered this script and faced a problem. It was designed for the Sumerian language, which was unrelated to their own Semitic tongue. Instead of inventing their own writing system from scratch, they did something brilliantly pragmatic. They adopted the cuneiform signs but used them to represent the sounds of their own Akkadian language. They took a sign that originally meant water in Sumerian, which was pronounced A, and started using it to represent the sound A in Akkadian words that had nothing to do with water. This process of adaptation, taking a script and repurposing it for a completely different language, is how cuneiform became the dominant writing system across the Near East for centuries, used to write languages as diverse as Elamite, Hittite, and Hurrian. It was the software of its day, and everyone wanted to run it. This linguistic borrowing often happened most intensely in the borderlands and trading colonies, the ancient equivalent of international airports. Take the city of Ugarit, a wealthy port on the coast of modern-day Syria. It was a melting pot where Canaanite, Cypriot, Hittite, Egyptian, and Mycenaean Greek merchants and diplomats all rubbed shoulders. It's no surprise that the scribes of Ugarit developed their own unique writing system, an alphabetic cuneiform. They took the revolutionary idea of an alphabet, where a small set of signs represents consonant sounds, from their Canaanite neighbors, but they wrote it using the familiar wedge-shaped style of Mesopotamian cuneiform. It was a perfect Creole script, a hybrid solution born from the necessity of communicating in a multilingual world. The untranslated tablets from such sites are gold mines for this very reason. They are likely filled with loanwords, mixed grammatical structures, and even code switching a scribe starting a sentence in one language and finishing it in another. Deciphering them wouldn't just give us new vocabulary. It would show us the living, breathing process of how cultures negotiate meaning right at the point of contact. Perhaps the most famous and impactful example of this phenomenon is the journey of the Phoenician alphabet. The Phoenicians were the master merchants of the Mediterranean, and their simple, efficient 22-letter consonantal alphabet was a powerful tool of commerce. As they established trading posts across the sea, local cultures encountered this script. The Greeks, in particular, saw its immense potential, but they encountered a problem. The Phoenician alphabet had signs for consonants that didn't exist in the Greek language. Instead of ignoring those signs, the Greeks repurposed them. They took the Phoenician letter aleph, which represented a glottal stop, and used it for the vowel sound, a. They did the same with other letters, creating dedicated symbols for vowel sounds for the very first time. This single, brilliant adaptation transformed the alphabet from a system that required a lot of guesswork into a precise instrument capable of recording the nuances of poetry, philosophy, and science. The Greek adaptation was then passed on to the Etruscans and eventually the Romans, forming the basis for the alphabet you're reading right now. This entire world-changing intellectual revolution began with a simple act of cross-cultural exchange at a trading post. This is why every untranslated tablet from a multicultural site is so incredibly precious. It's not just a text, it's a fossilized moment of interaction. A ledger from a Hittite port city might record the names of Mycenaean traders using a mix of Hittite and Greek phonetic signs. A religious text from a border town between Mesopotamia and Elam might invoke gods from both pantheons, their names written in a mixed orthography. Each of these documents has the potential to reveal the hidden pathways of ideas. It can show us that a technological innovation, previously credited to one culture, actually first appeared in another and was transmitted along a trade route. It can trace the movement of not just goods, but of concepts, legal traditions, and stories. These tablets are the hard evidence that humanity has always been connected, that our cultures are not pure and isolated, but are rich tapestries woven from threads borrowed, traded, and shared across continents and centuries. They remind us that the story of civilization is not one of separate melodies, but of a single, grand, and interconnected symphony. There is something deeply and fundamentally human about a locked door. It doesn't matter if that door is made of wood and iron or of baked clay and enigmatic symbols. The impulse is the same. We see it, and we cannot help but wonder what is on the other side. This innate drive, this relentless curiosity, is the engine behind our entire species' progress, and it is precisely what undeciphered scripts tap into with such powerful effect. They are the ultimate locked doors, and we are born with the desperate need to find the keys. It's a psychological pull that operates on multiple levels, from the pure, childlike joy of a puzzle to the profound, almost spiritual desire to reconnect with a lost part of our collective soul. On one level, it's the sheer intellectual challenge that captivates us, the perfect blend of pattern recognition and creative problem solving that our brains are hardwired to enjoy. It's the same satisfaction we get from a difficult crossword puzzle or a complex riddle, but amplified to a monumental scale. Deciphering an ancient script is the world's most difficult game of Sudoku, one where the grid is broken and the rules are unknown. Researchers and enthusiasts alike are drawn to the elegant logic of it, the process of building a coherent system from apparent chaos. Each potential phonetic value assigned to a sign, each grammatical rule hypothesized, is a move in this grand game. The thrill comes from those rare moments when the pieces suddenly click into place, when a string of meaningless marks transforms into a recognizable word, proving that a hypothesis was correct. It is a pure and powerful form of discovery, a moment of creating knowledge where there was only emptiness before. This process offers a deep sense of agency and accomplishment, the feeling of personally unlocking a secret that has been kept from humanity for centuries. But the appeal runs far deeper than mere intellectual gymnastics. These scripts also speak to our powerful narrative instinct, our need for stories. A translated tablet is more than data, it is a voice. It can be the voice of a long-dead accountant, painstakingly counting jars of oil, or a heartbroken poet, lamenting the loss of a loved one. Every undeciphered corpus represents thousands of such voices, an entire chorus of human experience that has been silenced. The desire to hear them is a form of empathy across time, a longing to know how people who looked at the same stars, loved their children, and feared death made sense of their world. We yearn for their stories not just out of historical curiosity, but because their experiences, their wisdom, and their follies are part of our own story. Recovering a lost myth or a forgotten epic is like finding a missing chapter in the grand book of human consciousness. It completes us. This quest is also fueled by a potent sense of romantic adventure, an allure that has been brilliantly encapsulated by popular culture. The figure of Indiana Jones, while a fictional caricature, resonates because he embodies this romantic ideal, the scholar-adventurer who braves physical danger and intellectual traps to recover a priceless relic that holds world-altering secrets. This fantasy, however exaggerated, connects with a very real truth about the field. The discovery of these tablets often did involve real adventure, digging in remote, harsh environments, navigating complex political landscapes, and literally pulling history from the dust. That aura of discovery, the potential for a find that could literally rewrite the history books, injects the often sedentary work of scholarship with a jolt of exhilarating possibility. It's the promise that the next tablet translated could be the one that contains a lost Homeric scale poem, the one that details a forgotten king's reign, or the one that explains the collapse of a mighty empire. Ultimately, this enduring fascination is a testament to human optimism. It is a belief that no door is permanently locked, no puzzle is forever unsolvable, and no voice is truly lost if we are clever and persistent enough to listen. It's what drives a linguist to spend a decade on a single grammatical feature, and it's what compels a viewer to click on a video about ancient scripts. We are all, in our own ways, drawn to the light of understanding, and these silent tablets represent one of the most compelling and challenging beams of that light still waiting to be uncovered. This shared psychological drive ensures that the quest will continue, passed down from generation to generation, as long as there are mysteries left in the clay and people who believe they can solve them. Yet for all the brilliant minds and cutting-edge technology dedicated to cracking these ancient codes, there is a fundamental, unglamorous reality that underpins every potential breakthrough: funding. The patient, painstaking work of decipherment does not happen in a vacuum. It requires significant and sustained financial investment. We're talking about the costs of mounting archaeological digs in remote locations, the expense of operating advanced imaging equipment like multispectral scanners and CT machines, and the essential salaries for the highly specialized linguists, archaeologists, and computer scientists who dedicate their careers to this work. This isn't a field with immediate commercial application or clear profitability. It operates on a different timescale, one where a successful project might take decades to yield its first major revelation, making it a challenging sell in a world often focused on quarterly results and rapid innovation. This places the field in a constant, delicate competition for a limited pool of scientific and cultural funding. Grant-giving bodies, whether government agencies like the National Science Foundation or private philanthropic organizations, are faced with impossible choices. How do you weigh a 10-year project to decipher a Bronze Age script against a promising new medical study that could save lives, or a physics experiment that might unlock new forms of energy? The immediate, tangible benefits of other scientific endeavors can often seem more compelling on a grant application than the abstract cultural value of understanding a 4,000-year-old economic ledger. This creates a perennial challenge for researchers who must become not only brilliant scholars but also persuasive advocates, constantly tasked with justifying the value of their work in a landscape of fierce competition for every available dollar. The nature of the work itself adds another layer of difficulty. Decipherment is inherently unpredictable. A team might spend 5 years and significant resources on a particular approach to Linear A, only to find they've reached a dead end. There is no guaranteed return on investment. No way to promise a donor that their money will definitively result in a world-altering discovery by a certain date. This uncertainty can make large-scale, long-term funding incredibly difficult to secure. Many projects are forced to operate on shoestring budgets, relying on small, short-term grants that keep the lights on but don't allow for the ambitious, multi-pronged, collaborative research that is most likely to lead to a major breakthrough. It's a slow and often frustrating process where progress is measured in tiny, incremental steps rather than dramatic eureka moments. However, there are powerful models of success that point the way forward. Strategic, visionary investment from certain foundations and institutions has repeatedly proven to be a game changer. The Mellon Foundation, for instance, has been a stalwart supporter of the digital humanities, providing crucial funding for projects that bridge the gap between traditional scholarship and computational analysis. Their support has enabled the creation of vast digital archives of cuneiform texts, the development of machine learning tools specifically designed for paleography, and the fostering of international collaborations that would otherwise be logistically and financially impossible. This kind of funding recognizes that the value of decipherment is not just in the final translated text, but in the entire infrastructure of knowledge it builds: the datasets, the software, and the trained experts who will form the next generation of scholars. Ultimately, the long-term health of the field depends on its ability to make a compelling case for its cultural necessity. This goes beyond academic circles and into the realm of public advocacy. It's about demonstrating that understanding the intricacies of the ancient Assyrian tax system or the poetic meter of a lost Canaanite hymn is not an obscure academic indulgence. This knowledge is foundational to our understanding of ourselves. It reveals the deep roots of our economic systems, our political structures, our literary traditions, and our spiritual yearnings. It teaches us humility, showing us that our modern challenges are often echoes of ancient ones, and provides us with a much longer timeline of human experimentation, failure, and success from which to draw wisdom. Securing the resources needed to continue this work means convincing a broader audience that investing in the past is, in fact, one of the most profound investments we can make in our future. So as we reach the end of our journey, it's worth pausing to truly absorb what these silent tablets represent. They are not merely museum curiosities or academic trophies. They are frozen moments of human thought, each one a direct portal to a mind that thought, a hand that worked, and a voice that spoke thousands of years ago. The potential locked within their encoded lines is nothing short of revolutionary. A single, successfully translated economic record could force us to redraw the map of ancient trade, revealing a network that connected continents earlier than we ever dreamed. A deciphered religious hymn could introduce us to an entirely new pantheon of gods, fundamentally shifting our perception of a culture's spiritual world. These are not small adjustments to the historical record. They are the keys that could unlock entirely new narratives about how power was wielded, how societies were organized, and how humanity's creative spirit found its first expressions. What makes this moment in history so uniquely thrilling is the convergence of new tools and new minds. We are no longer relying solely on the lone genius working by lamplight, though that passion remains essential. Today, we are building a global network of curiosity, where artificial intelligence can scan thousands of fragments for patterns invisible to the human eye, where imaging technology can see through fire and time to read a text thought lost forever, and where online platforms allow anyone, anywhere to contribute to the puzzle. This collaborative spirit, this marriage of cutting-edge science and human intuition, means that a breakthrough that once might have taken a century could now happen in a matter of years. We are quite literally standing on the precipice of a new age of discovery, where the next great revelation is not a matter of if, but when. This is a conversation that extends far beyond the walls of academia. It belongs to all of us. Every time a new script falls, we all gain a deeper, richer, and more complex understanding of our shared human story. It's a story that is still being written, one clay fragment at a time. We want to hear from you. Which of these ancient mysteries captures your imagination the most? Is it the possibility of finally hearing the Minoan voices in Linear A, or unraveling the sophisticated Indus Valley system, or perhaps hearing the lost stories of Rongo from Easter Island? Let us know in the comments below, and if you want to join us for the next chapter of this incredible detective story, be sure to subscribe. Thank you for exploring the depths of history with us, for your curiosity, and for believing that even the smallest piece of clay can hold a secret worth waiting